So it's been a while since I dropped a bombshell regarding Matsuricon, John himself, and his cucks, and with the exception of some unmotivated, delusional idiots, people were fair about it. And I thought about doing a little bit of an update video to clear the air on some things here. For those unfamiliar of what happened and don't have 49 minutes to kill, I'll do a quick summary. Matsuricon is an anime con in Columbus, Ohio that's been around since 2006. I used to be a supporter for this con from the 2010s and made a video in December titled The Lazy and Intense Deception of Matsuricon. In that video, I addressed the various controversies John and his gang have come across from stuff reported from consumers, myself included, and some former staffers, and showcasing why people are slowly losing interest in the con as the years progress. These reasons have ranged from an unhealthy sense of entitlement, a lack of a consistent roadmap, lethargic mannerisms, and toxic remarks with staff's engagement to the consumers and other staffers, to what others perceive as lies and manipulation. And they don't like the fact that I expose them as frauds, bad actors, and unreliable narrators in some cases. Now, there's one mistake I did make in that video, though it doesn't change the overall outcome on this cult following in particular. In one of the segments, I mentioned that compiling 100 plus emails to international guests wasn't normal. It actually is common since they have to go through various agencies representing those guests, the cons as well, and the department to get those people to be a part of the guest roster. However, John still let his sense of entitlement show with his obsessions being so unhealthy. He treats everything that he likes like if he's a child going into one of the big toy stores in New York. So with that out of the way, I apologize about that oopsie. Thanks to that one person for commenting on this, especially since I have no staffing experience under my belt. Moving on. But on another person who commented about my video that I mentioned about how we handle conflict shows us how to grow, and it's worth celebrating for the improvements made, which has been and still is a part of society, even from valid criticism in general. Another thing to keep in mind, especially John, Nicole, Hack, and so forth, when you guys have these things that are called a set of testicles and a spine, you can be open to criticism and not cry about it, let alone let your fragility show. And as previously mentioned, I tried doing that with John and Nicole nicely once in an email after cooling my jets down. Didn't work out all that well on their end. Another thing that's misleading from this person's comment is saying that I was holding on to these negative feelings rather than keep everything inside myself. And if I kept everything inside, obviously that would do more hurt to someone who has looked up to those people that have made promises between being on top of things and not meeting those expectations. And when you're a con that's been around for almost 20 years and claiming to make changes and progression in front of humanity, but don't bother doing so about 95% of the time, and you continue to sit on a fence and guilt trip people to give you support, let alone make fluff posts to push stuff out of the algorithm, there's no trust nor support to be given to those people for putting the blame on others. Especially for longtime supporters who show and provide both receipts and context with due diligence to the best of their advantage, that's a totally different ball field. And to anybody who doesn't get that, you're stupid. You need to go touch ocean water and have more common sense. And another thing to retort is, it's not fair to say what I made was an unbiased breakdown, because all I did was showcase the things John and his buddies have said and done. They themselves have done some questionable things that they haven't fixed things in front of the people who looked up to them as inspirational. And while a handful of instances I have mentioned were fixed, their responses weren't justifiable as a result. But regardless if a fix has been made or not, it's still not a good look overall. Although, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most unprofessional and worst, their business model and their 4D chess is an 8. So it's not fair to say that I've held on to these feelings even with my 2 forms of therapy in play, and when I've openly expressed said feelings without hesitation. Also, there were consumers and former staffers that spoke up against Matsuricon for metaphorically sleeping on the job and passing verbal hostility onto others before I turned against them 4 years ago. Hence the title, The Lazy and Intense Deception of Matsuricon. But if it was this video only, I probably wouldn't have made it in the first place. Even if at one point they were like, hey, this is what we have, our con is a turd, go ahead and buy a badge if you want to, people get suckered into that, I wouldn't have made a single video on that either. And in one comment on my video, I saw someone share that they used to be a part of staff and reported about John and his friends allowing underage drinking and will silence anyone trying to speak on it. However, since I didn't know about this until hours later after uploading that one video, I also tried looking at other places for proof, and I'll admit I don't have enough evidence to showcase anything here nor back anything up. I'm also not here to prove nor disprove anything in this case, Even if a lot of other cons have horror stories behind them, I'm not gonna bother with this one because I've already done way too much research on the last video regarding Matsuricon. But even if this was like a 1 year only kind of a thing, this is still shady behavior nonetheless, even with all the crap that I've shown so far. It's also not true to say I've held on to anger in this regard. Mostly. If I wanted to demonize John and his buddies, then I wouldn't have included the parts where they doubled down or defended themselves whenever I could find them. And if I wanted to dwell on their suffering, I could have made more follow-up videos, but I chose not to since the Ohio cosplay scene and their white knights are so fucking brain dead, they think somehow putting a toaster in a bathtub is a safe thing. During the part where I talked about Derek, Steve, and Prince being announced as a guest at first, I still included their explanation from after the removal was done when they told someone about reaching out to them, as well as that person calling them out for Matsuricon's unprofessional mismanagement of the situation, even after it was resolved so that it wouldn't be one-sided. And again, I've done my due diligence to the best of my advantage throughout these testimonies, where they've been summed up to the point where you should do anything but take John and his metaphorical fuck buddy's words at face value. Even the handful of parts where I said that I speculated or wasn't sure about what was true and what wasn't, I still was upfront and honest by saying these things were a slight chance of a maybe. Even in the segment where I was talking about John's unhealthy obsessions between Final Fantasy and the K-pop bandwagon, for example, not once in that video did I ever confirm that he was using cancer as a shield to get what he wants as a survivor of such a heavy and sensitive topic like this. Nor did I gatekeep what one can and can't like when it comes to hobbies in general. Something like that is just an unhealthy mindset to have, and in John's case, manipulative to the fans on how John publicized all these things himself. And realistically speaking, I also want everyone to be reminded that if you're 50 years old, you're allowed to like Hello Kitty. Though, in some cases where other IPs like Sonic have people like Chris Chan, Lizzie Hedgehog, Donkey Dude, and so forth, it's not always ethical depending on their respective behaviors. But for those that know how to cool their jets down even over minor things and know how to control themselves and see the world around them, cool. Continue sharing your love with that hobby. But don't let your sense of entitlement show when you're also begging people to support an overmilked RPG franchise, let alone make fluff posts asking for $12,000 for a statue or something to that effect, even if you're joking. But I don't want this video being longer than usual with John's unhealthy obsessions, so I'm just gonna drop the hobby stuff where it is and move on. I also commented on the disparity between him and his staff's convention persona, as well as their actual characters off the con floor, which they themselves have also made a public spectacle, even on Discord. I even included the things John had said to me after I came forward about the metaphorical scars his former and current crew gave me even before said video. I could go on and on about their instances of sex toppling down so it also wouldn't be one-sided. It also touched up on a former staffer being manipulated to give the con another chance after being asked if a cosplay was out of line and the verbal hostility they got. The passive-aggressive behavior regarding John and his gang's responses to COVID, another former staffer being there from the beginning and being thrown under the bus as a result, Matsuricon's lack of communication and consistency, Hack's misrepresentation of me without being name-dropped and constant gaslighting, cosplayer SSN's improper edit on their statement about the lack of a proper see-it-own-it policy Matsuricon has that you normally see in retail stores, Warp Speed printing small claims court against John's fraudulent payment, and even more. Even to the numbnut that commented that I was being an unreliable narrator who has beef with the con, this isn't beef, this is a reporting of unethical, immoral, and untrustworthy mannerisms. Again, throughout the whole process of that piece is to prove that you shouldn't take John and his gang's words at face value. Even if someone is donating to a charity for a sensitive topic, it takes more than just donating to a good cause to gain trust in someone. Hell, I even used to think these people were nice guys until I dug deep into this rabbit hole. And even if it was a different con, or even a business, you also want the people running the ship to dot the I's and cross the T's to improve for the better. And John, if your convention is a family-friendly business, which you and Nicole said it is, but according to these public statements those people and I have shared, these aren't signs of family friendliness. You and your team have an obligation, a moral obligation, to take the time to validate the voices of the consumers and staffers about the fears and concerns, and make sure those voices are appropriated, as I plead they do to you guys. And also be courteous to each other by doing a better job at keeping and running a safe and mindful environment.
Matsuricon in Columbus, Ohio is an anime convention I've attended so many times that I've lost count. It was one of my first anime conventions all the way back in 2013 and still continues to be one of my favorites. But how did it stack up this year? Were they able to maintain that Matsuricon quality of the past, or have they finally started to fall off? Let's jump into it.
Do you think this person knew from a non-consumer perspective that the staff were just being lethargic and doing damage control to cover their tracks? How do you think these kinds of people are going to react after they see the colorful behavior from the people running the event, especially when it's being publicized in this fashion to not fix said behavior for humanity? That's the part that hurts to see the most. Though, in all fairness, this is miscommunication at best and selfish shady shit at worst. And it takes bigger and more successful conventions to look at scenarios like this and wonder if they should be allowed to advertise on the con floor. After all that's come out about them, because it's weird to see voices of all in cases like this to be seen, but not heard nor validated as equally as it should. It is a wild scenario. But the real damning part about all this is not the fact that this is Matsuricon. Again, an organization ran by people I had respect for at one point. I wouldn't have looked into this to make sure I wasn't losing my mind as to why John and his gang like to bury their feet in the sand in cases like this, because he and Nicole are the two public-facing figures in this non-union organization. They're the ones that are going to be facing a lot of the backlash. And this isn't even a case of covering someone who was on my shit list to begin with, nor automatically gave me bad vibes after being exposed to them ever since day one of being exposed to said person. For the people that are and were a part of Matsuricon, Hack included, those people are a group of people I trusted once. And to see them be a bunch of manipulative jabronis where their only responses are to block, silence, and do manipulative business tactics as possible, like it's Disney, that's what also hurts to see as well. And regardless of what form of cancer is going to a good cause, and regardless of who addressed what controversies to your faces, John, and instead of worrying about what the public perception will have on you and Nicole over this video as well as the last one, and the testimonies from everybody else before me, you and your gang also have to realize that the con is still standing, and it shouldn't have mattered if us consumers and former staffers sent a message to you privately where you guys started to face the dilemma of, should we fix things for the better? Is it going to make us look guilty? Look, at the end of the day, John, you and your team messed up. But if the business is still afloat, it's still not too late to turn things around for better, because that's the whole point of pieces like this and the testimonies from the people that were victimized by you guys. The whole point is, like the Peloton website said, to make a fucking impact. And making an impact means appropriately validating both consumers and staffers alike on any kerfuffles and being on top of things with courteousness in mind every step of the way. Businesses and humanity don't evolve if they're shafting voices to the side and invalidating their feelings in all of this. Let authorities do the job for this staff, depending on the threat level, and guilt trip people every chance they get. Had I not covered these things, would Matsuricon have evolved to maintain mindfulness within the next day, the next year, the next 10 years? It's a question I'll ask forever till the end of time.
A lot better than you right now.
But I want to end this video off by saying, John, even though it's great to see you're still here after battling a life-threatening scenario such as cancer, blaming others on the misfortune of your con and its improper direction doesn't do anybody favors. It's completely unproductive and selfish on your part, and it makes you look bad, and further escalates the negativity that you, Hack, and everybody else try so hard to avoid. And the only way to make it right is to fucking appropriate those people's voices and better yourselves as a part of humanity. I don't give a fuck what kind of background you come from, nor even what kind of mental diagnoses some of you guys might have. You need to pass respect onto others as they do to you. And that respect means being trustworthy and mindful of others. And it's companies and people like you guys that have zero ethics that are also hurting pop culture. And nobody's gonna stop until you and your white knights stop lying from your asses.